Hello on this Sunday of August 29th, 2021. So we're here back to doing our remote services. We're talking about my service this week. So Michael, thank you for being here. You're welcome, Michael. Thank you for having me. So,
Who is he? Oh,
right. Kim wanted to go first.
Well, I got suckered into it.
Yeah.
Space lie, but we told Kim she was going first.
Fair enough, yeah.
Well, I really liked the sermon because I know you and I have spoke about it on our walks about how, we get so, we're so distant from each other that civil war is the only thing that's going to happen if we don't start cooperating with each other. So I really agree with everything he said. You said.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of times where I feel like we're not listening to each other. Just because we don't agree with each other doesn't mean we can't listen to each other. Because we live and when you have free speech, you're going to disagree with stuff, because that's just the way free speech works. But what I don't like is when someone disagrees with me and then they're like insinuating that I'm stupid and I'm not saying anyone does that around here. I'm just saying that's the what I hear on when you see all these comments. They call people stupid and your mind, you better go to a psychiatrist because your mind's wrong. And I mean, they really say mean things. And just because you've made a decision on something, yeah. We have that right to do that, and I'll bring up vaccinations because that's the current thing that's going on right now. You should be able to choose if you want the vaccination or not without people saying that you're being selfish because you decided you don't want to do it, don't want to get one for whatever reason. And on the other hand, you shouldn't be making people feel bad because they did get it. And really, in the first place, you shouldn't be. I wouldn't ever come up and ask anybody, did you get the vaccination? Because I think that's a personal thing. That's between you and yourself, if you want to get it or not. And yet we're having vaccination mandates and we're having all this different things going on. And I think that's really unfair on both sides of the issue.
Right. So let's explore that for just a second. So how do you feel about businesses or organizations that are saying vaccine only? Do you think that that's also an infringement on rights or privacy?
Yeah.
Okay.
I definitely think
so do you think that businesses should not be able to say vaccine only?
No, I don't think they should be doing that.
Okay.
Because it's a private thing. It shouldn't be asked.
Fair enough. How do you feel about the argument that because it's a communicable disease, one person's decision not to get vaccinated might affect others?
Well, right now, I think year and a half into this, we've all been exposed. So there's no way of not being exposed to it at this point.
Okay.
It's not a matter of if you might get it, it's a matter of when you're going to get it. Okay. At this point.
Okay.
And so you just have to take precautions if you feel like you might get it quick, get it bad, and just be careful. Wash your hands a lot. I see
right.
I see people walk out of the bathroom without washing their hands, for crying out loud. It's really gross, but you gotta wash your hands. You touch everything, you gotta wash your hands.
Right.
And it's the same thing with these masks. We're wearing a paper mask and saying, if you're not wearing it, you're going to kill somebody. I'm thinking, well, paper mask doesn't do anything.
Yeah, I think your point is well taken. That it's something that we're hearing a lot on social media. It's something that we're debating a lot in our communities. I was at the Methodist Church earlier this morning where I got into a conversation with the pastor about how are we, basically because this sermon was on my mind, and how in the world can we solve some of these social dilemmas and these social problems? And he talked about getting people together in a room on both sides of the issues, but controlling the language where you're not allowed to use words like communist, socialist, fascist, racist, unless you can draw a direct parallel between those mentalities and what is happening now. Because a lot of times, like, these terms get thrown around so much that they've lost all meaning, or at least they've lost the meaning that makes them useful, right?
I mean, when someone disagrees with you, so they call you a racist, a xenophobe, a da 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 da. You're like, just because I have an opinion, I get all these name calls.
Well, but it happens on the other side too,
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm not saying it happens on one side versus another thing. I'm saying it's happening. You got disagreement. Well, let's just call you racist now.
Right. Larry, did you have your hand up? I couldn't tell. No? Okay. Yeah. Oh, go for it, Gladys.
I take that, with deep meaning, because I do see it on both sides, where there'd be name calling, and I maintain, and I always have, that if you're down to name calling, you've got nothing. You need to have an argument that makes sense. If you have to call me names to make your point, it's not going to happen. So it comes down to respect. Whatever your beliefs are about this, I do respect you as a person. I may or may not agree with you, but I'll never call you a name for what your belief is.
Right.
And that, I think, is a great source of hope. I think that, for me, the more I base people's opinions off of what I see on social media, the more depressed I get, So, and that is, the social media path is the path to depression medication, Go ahead, Martha.
As being an old person, where we used to sit down and talk, and social media was maybe we wrote notes to each other.
Right.
I think that social media does provide a really role. I had a birthday yesterday, and I got lots of nice wishes from people from all over the country that I don't see often. That's when social media shines. When social media is used, I mean, it's just like we were in high school years ago. That's about 60 years ago. I was in high school, 65. I don't remember. But we had slam books. Does anybody remember type? And what it was is you had a question on every page, and it was derogatory. Who, da 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 da, and you'd put names down, and you would be number one. And so on every page you would answer with number one. So you were sort of anonymous, but you weren't. I mean, it was mean, yes, it was fun, but it only went within your little group kind of thing. It was just teenage crap is what it was. But now all the teenage crap becomes universal on social media. And the algorithms are addictive. You know that. I mean, so I avoid it like the plague. I don't use it except for wishing people happy birthday, or if somebody is posting about their vacation or something like that. I mean, I think we have used this medium and beat it to death, and it's going in the wrong direction. And so if that's how we're running our social discourse, we don't have much leg to stand on as far as reason and discussion. And think of the debates that Lincoln had. Some of those debates lasted for an hour and a half. Do you think anybody in their right mind today would sit and listen to a debate for an hour and a half? I mean, that's what's wrong. People need to hear what each person has to say and have to listen. There.
Now, well, to that point, I don't know how many of you listen to Joe Rogan, but he has like 3-hour shows where it's just they discuss whatever for 3 hours. And actually, because he has the most popular podcast really in the world, and so when the presidential debates were happening this time around, he offered to host a 3-hour debate between Trump and Biden, and he would moderate it. And the the response was just this overwhelming excitement that maybe something like that could actually happen. Of course it didn't, but no, Martha, it's a good point, especially like, when we think about how we used to, like, popular ways we used to communicate, the stereotype was like the teenage girl who ties up the phone line for hours and hours
Yeah.
every night.
And we had
you know.
one line per
Right.
family, and you had to share. That's what's
Right.
another problem we've got. Nobody
One line
knows how
per
to
neighborhood.
share anymore.
and when you had call waiting, you were something special, if you had call
You bet.
waiting.
Whoa.
But and now that stereotype or that meme has completely disappeared. It's disappeared into the idea of like kids, with their noses right here in their phones all the time. And I think there are really, really good things about that. So for instance, there is something to be said for young people not having to experience boredom. It's like if the adults are talking, and the kid has the phone and can just do whatever, it would seem on the surface that like everybody is a winner. The kid's not going to be bugging the parents. The kid's not bored, just like waiting for the parents to do something. But on the other hand, there's a lot of social conditioning that happens when when like the kid is forced to be patient and wait out the adult conversation. The adults are forced to take into consideration the kid's feelings.
I'm, having an extended family growing up, we sat around the table for a long time, including the kids. I learned so much. My granddad was in World War II. My dad was in World War I, and my dad was in World War II. And we learned about stuff. And it was amazing, the breadth of some of that stuff still comes back to me. And it's learning that everybody's different and everybody has opinion. My granddad was the first to go, rah, 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 and he had a vocabulary. We followed him around with a swear box because he had very colorful vocabulary.
Right.
So my cousin and I would catch him and he'd have to put a nickel in it. I mean, but it teaches children difference and tolerance. And now we don't have adults who have tolerance and difference.
Oh my.
You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Do you hear what I'm saying? So so we loved our granddad, but he was quite the colorful character. And he made fun of you if you couldn't drink his coffee, which was so thick you could stick a spoon in it. It's just those kinds of silly little things you just learned to put up with. And it didn't hurt anybody. It didn't. So that's what's missing today. The extended discussions and that's where our congregation really has a lot of skills here, because we do attempt to do that and hear everybody out.
Well,
So,
it's the only congregation I've ever seen that has a sermon response. There might be others, but that's a rarity, I would say. And and I used to when I was a child, I was about 7 or 8, I would spend 1 week or 1 day a week with my grandmother, my mother's mother, and we would have conversations about what it was like, growing, living in World War II times. And I learned
stuff
of information from her. And and I cherish those memories. Larry wanted to jump in, I think.
So, Michael, I'd like to go to your 3 points.
Okay.
Because
that sounds great, JC. But Larry was trying to get in. Can we do that after?
that'll be fine.
The moment is pretty much past. Just go ahead with JC.
Are you okay? Well, maybe we can, to quote our press secretary, circle back at some point. So go ahead, JC. JC, let's go to what
Okay.
you're thinking.
Well, your first one, I guess I'm remembering the things that I've learned in nonviolent communication. And what nonviolent communication does is basically teach you to lose certain words from your vocabulary so that you cannot be violent
Right.
with your words. Okay. Big on compassion. And the word that there's another word like compassion that I can't think of right now. If you remember what it is, I think it starts with A. But this is 85 years talking to you. I know that word as well as my own name, which is Mary Jane. All right. So you said we, as humanity, we are a shared humanity. And what I know, and maybe is my biggest discovery in these last years, is that essentially part of humanity is vulnerability,
Yes.
which is therefore, in my book, the reason why our first and last principles are we're here to take care of each other.
Mhm.
We are not here. I also learned from my shamanic daughter, I am here to satisfy my soul's game plan for even coming here. But the thing, since I'm human, then I am vulnerable. I feel compassion for other people. I want to behave in ways that support others and don't endanger them. And I expect that from other people, if they are people I live my life with. If I don't find that, I do not cultivate that relationship, because I'm not in control of other people. I am only in control of myself.
Yeah.
So and when you are vulnerable, starting from when you're very, very vulnerable and very young, you fear.
Yes.
You're afraid of things that don't support you or don't care about you. So you learn to identify. Now, for instance, this morning, we watched a bluebird couple try to convince their little one to fly. And she was saying, "You gotta be kidding, not for me, not today." And he went back to the nest, and the mother and dad gave up for the day. So, but, you know, the kid has got to learn to fly, but it's not today. He's afraid today. Well, we grow up the same way. We got to say to our parents sometimes, I won't say this out loud, but you've got to be kidding.
Right.
So then when you get to be 75, 85 years old, you finally say, they're not around, so I won't tell them, but I don't believe that anymore.
Yeah.
And so you get a conscience that is your own. And then you said the second thing is, so you will ask people how they feel about things or what they think about things. And right now, that is incredibly important to me, because I'm finding that I'm feeling newly about most things. The letters to the editor this morning, many of them seem to believe or seem to see a connection between traffic rules and one's stance on the pandemic.
Right.
The traffic rules are not questionable. They're very clear, and we all know that they are to be followed. And you can lose your right to run a car if you don't follow them. And most times when people die in traffic accidents, some rule was abridged.
Right.
Okay. I am not even going to get into it, because the muscles that hold my jaw are so tight when I even think about the people who don't understand the impact of, I can't think of the word now, when a disease is transferable. What's that?
Oh, communicable. Yeah.
Communicable.
Yeah.
Do not understand the power in that word communicable. So I'm not even going to go there, but
JC, real quick, I am curious about some clarification, because you were around when traffic laws, seatbelt laws, speed limits, all of those things were being implemented, I think, right?
yes.
Yeah.
And I was also around when polio and every other disease that I had already had, because it was a kid disease.
Right.
Okay.
But,
Yeah.
but what I'm
The
curious,
question is,
what I'm curious about is, was there resistance while those things were forming? While speed limits were being formed or seatbelt laws were being formed?
yes, I'm
Okay.
sure there was.
There's
And
still
I'm sure
resistance to
people
seatbelt.
died even then because of it. But in the long run, there was a prevailing concept that we do these things in order to give safety to everyone driving a car.
Right.
And that is the overriding and only remaining principle about it. So that, and that's because we're vulnerable and we can't handle it without rules about how we treat one another. So anyway, so when you ask the questions, Michael, your second point, do you ask also for their responses?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Especially in the, sometimes like a question is designed to stop the conversation or to stop the person from talking, like the individual. And this is something that I've learned to spot very quickly, is people will flippantly talk about violence as a solution to the problem. So for instance, one of the popular, more comical terms that's being thrown around are things like eat the rich, where people speak very candidly and very happily about like guillotining the wealthy.
But that's not even sensible.
Fair enough. I agree. But my question, what always raises my curiosity is, I know you're joking, right? But you wouldn't be joking unless there was some kernel in this that made you think that this was like, it brought you some happiness. This thought brings you some amount of joy. And what I'm curious about is, could you be the one to do that? The people who would say like, and forgive me, I don't want to trigger anyone, but we need to exterminate one particular kind of race. Well, okay, are you going to do that? Are you going to pull the trigger? Are you, sorry, I go off onto a tangent.
Okay, I got where you're going, but
Yeah.
Michael, how about if the answer that someone had the guts to say, I said that because I'm afraid.
Okay. Okay.
Or I said that because I think it will I think I'm losing something.
Right.
Okay, that's a real thought. That's a real person speaking. The person who uses that ridiculous humor like that is trying out for some talk show.
Sure.
That is not a person giving you a serious answer that involves them and their own vulnerability, because that's not the answer of a vulnerable person.
Right.
That's an answer of a person who is pretending not to be vulnerable, i.e., not to be a little scared.
Right.
And you
So
said today, you're scared
I am scared.
what's
Yeah.
happening.
Yes.
And that means it's time for everybody to get real. So anyway, I'm chattering, so let me hit the third one.
Okay.
There, that you believe that there is an order to reality. Don't think you said reality, but
That's okay.
that what we know is,
Mhm.
okay, I would like everybody to know that I am celebrating because I have just read a book called The Art of Possibility. And I truly do believe that love is the essential relationship between human beings. And it is going to be so different because this man and woman who wrote this book, just one thing out of the 7 things they offer is quit talking about what has to die in order for me to have it to be my way. I understand that. I have to get over being afraid. So what they are suggesting is what has to happen for it to be possible for me to have what I want? What has to happen, not what has to die? What has to come alive? And often that is the other 6 things that they have in the book, one of which is a teacher who says to the students in September, I want you to write, your homework for tonight is to write a letter to yourself as if you are in May about how you have enjoyed what's on in your life when I tell you right now, you are all getting an A.
Mhm.
And I will treat you as if you are all expecting to get an A.
Right.
And if you are capable of getting an A, I will talk to you as if you are an A student and you are expected to respond in kind. Well, now that takes probably 80% of the people in that class have to give up who they think they are in a class and whether or not they do the work and whether or not they raise their hand or whether or not they act like an A student, which is the person you don't play with on the recess anyway, because, okay. So yes, I go along with that, but I really believe that that's where we ought to be.
Right.
Talking about what is in that order in our reality.
Right.
Because let's face it, the one we've been with and I've lived in for 85 years is not working. It can make us come to this point where we no longer understand that a contagious disease is not in our control, except by science.
Okay.
And my life, I'm 85 years old and very healthy because I have not had, I either had the diseases and got the
natural immunity.
Yeah, got it. Thank you very much. You're going to have to be quicker with that with me.
It's okay.
You know where
It's
things
okay.
go. Come on. But the point is, this time it's going to be different. The kind of thinking that allows us to leave people, to offer people fear instead of support is no longer going to be acceptable. It ain't human
Right.
to do that.
Yeah. So, because so much of what you touched on, is something that I deeply feel, like you and I both served as teachers, so the idea of giving students that extra bit, there's a Hindu saying that the student is not a vessel in which you are to pour knowledge, right? The student is a lamp that needs to be lit. And yeah, so JC, when you're talking about I'm going to treat you all like A students. It's that lighting the wick, of inspiration.
And it
Uh,
doesn't well, the book is just wonderful, and it's made me happy to read it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm going to
Yeah.
turn it into something on this scene here. But the point is, there is so much negative competition in our culture
Yes.
that we have even tolerated the fact that people are dying by the hundreds because they were all vaccinated when they were babies.
Right.
They don't realize how vaccination has already protected their lives.
Well, and okay, and all of this is fair. Everything that you've said, again, is a very, very fair point, right? What we're trying to do as a culture is to navigate our concerns versus our individuality versus our social responsibility. So much like I asked Kim, how do you feel about independent places being able to say that you're, vaccination only, right? Which is something that personally I feel an institution has the right to do, because I'm a small L libertarian in that sense. I believe in individual autonomy. But can you appreciate the reticence on the part of those who look back on the history of government programs and to know that atrocities were done on the part of the government to the population? We shouldn't forget that many Jews went willingly into the ghettos and into the concentration camps, believing that this was just a temporary thing, on the part of the government.
I
And
know.
saying,
Yes, I understand.
Okay.
And I don't think we need to do that. But
yeah,
it's just, if we just all remember that no matter how we may be acting, we are all vulnerable.
I
And
agree.
vulnerable makes us fearful.
Yes.
And therefore, anyone who's been a mother or father knows what lengths we will go to have our children not be afraid.
Right.
Now, we also say, you're doing that. This makes me so sad. You ruin my day. I mean, come on. We scare the shit out of our children, thinking that will make them behave.
Yes.
Well,
No.
we take it all in later and we say, oh, well, I would never say that to my kid because I understood what it was. So we're a mixed bag right now. But what I'm saying is this one thing this pandemic has done, it has shut down the culture.
Yes.
For a long enough time that we'll say, whatever probability, let's just get something that works.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
I'm done.
No, but JC,
I'm done chattering. That's somebody else talking.
No, but Kim and JC both, because you two are kind of like on opposite sides of the issue.
Oh.
And and I appreciate so much, because this really is what I was trying to talk about in the service, is can we get together and just hear each other out? So this is good for me. I appreciate the both of you.
Only if we're wearing a mask and are 6 feet away and are outside. Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough.
Be
Okay,
careful,
great.
I'll come hug you.
Right. Maybe we can hear from somebody else. Larry, you want to come back to what you were thinking, or?
If it was funny, this would
Yeah,
be
like
a
funny
good time for something lighthearted.
Yeah,
I
we've
can
got crickets.
Yeah.
I can throw out my comment about social media. I'm not on it very often, not like the kids I see, but I used to be a scoutmaster years ago when I was younger, some Mexican kids out of Compton, of all places. And I took them out for camping trips. Well, now they're in their 50s,
Oh, wow.
and they found me on Facebook.
Yeah.
And I got together with them. We took last year, or no, 2 years ago. We see them every year now when I go in that part of the country. But we got a camping trip together and went on a camping trip to remember the old days.
Mhm.
Without
Wow.
Facebook, that would have never happened.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
so
it's good.
I'm really
Yeah.
glad that now they're having trouble reconciling who I am today with who I was back then, because you're not the same person. Like, yeah, look at me.
That happens. Yeah.
But anyways, there's just one comment. This is all
Yeah.
lovely material. And actually, I don't have an opinion on this vaccination thing
Okay.
personally. I got
Fair enough.
vaccinated because I see it as a social thing.
Mhm.
People ask you.
Can I
So,
address
since I
that?
don't care.
Mhm. Yeah. Go for it, Martha. And then Paul, I think, wanted to get in.
I'm going to throw my age around again because I'm a World War II baby and I remember rationing. We had to go without stuff in order to exist. We
Yes.
had to do things in order for the safety of our country. I also remember polio. We stayed home. We couldn't go anywhere because it was so deathly afraid. Then once we got the vaccine, everybody lined up. We had vaccine clinics in schools. We had vaccine clinics in churches so that everybody could get the vaccine. I had to suffer mumps. I had to suffer measles, chicken pox, the whole crapola. So we remember those things and it's damaging. Kids died. We
Or in
didn't
the
have,
iron lungs and stuff like that.
Yeah,
I mean, it was
But
dramatic.
what my
I see you,
point
Kim.
is that so many people today have not grown up having to do without. That's what I see.
Mhm.
There's a certain aspect of your psyche that's affected when you know that you can't do something because it's helping whatever, the bigger
Well-
good. And I think that's really missing.
To buttress, yeah, if it, one thing that you were talking about is rationing and going without, and something that I think it's important for us to remember is on top of that rationing, there was this idea that it was your patriotic duty.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
World War II, it was.
Right. And so I don't believe that we have that kind of umbrella, right, as a culture right now, that like it's not considered virtuous right now to be patriotic. It's not considered virtuous to be religious in a lot of ways, so all of these organizations that have social, that we fall under socially, like we are American, we are Christians, we are,
Whatever. Yeah.
has fallen away a lot, so that it's that social cohesion. I don't know how to achieve that new social cohesion. Paul and then Kim wanted to talk.
Well, I wanted to circle back around to social media. Social media has transformed our society. For the good. I mean, Larry was just talking about reconnecting with kids he's known from Compton, which is a really good use of social media. It keeps people connected in that way. But the dark side of social media is that, first of all, I think it's turning a generation or two into self-centered narcissists. I mean, people are on social media to see how many likes they get. And
All
it's-
part of it.
it kind of in the beginning reminded me of the popular kids in school that had to be popular just to be in the class. But I think that social media now has had a huge role in shaping our perspective about the world and about dissenting opinion. You get social media bullies and trolls. You could say something and then there's 1,000 people that tell you that you're worthless and
Yep.
how terrible you are because you have this thought. And I think that we have all become slaves to this medium in some degree or another. If you're using it for just as an address book and a way to stay connected with friends, it's wonderful. But not everybody uses social media in that way. There's a lot of hate and dissension. And I think some of it is for self-gratification to justify your perspective and trying to sway other people to have your perspective. And it becomes this situation where there's no real resolution. Everybody's got their side and they're sticking to it, and they're closed to open thought and considering what the other people say. Now it's just, no, this is the way it is. And I think that this is dangerous because it forms these divisions that seem to be there's no real way of resolving them unless someone steps forward and says, well, tell me about your point of view. Tell me what you.
Right. Well, that's the real conversation, right? Not I'm right and let me scream at you. About about how right I am. And Paul, you make a good point that, like, especially for those of us over the age of 40, I don't know about all of you, but that's when those darn kids attitude started to kick in.
Let's face it, you're middle age, Michael.
That's right. Yeah. But there's a lot of beauty that has come with technology. I have friends in Japan that I wouldn't get to talk to, and I get to message with them and communicate on a regular basis. That's an incredible gift. So, but I think because, like, anytime a new innovation happens, it's going to bring with it all of its gifts, but all of its complications. And I'm going to say it again, I'm so sorry, but Thomas Sowell, who said there are no such things as solutions, only trade-offs. And I think that's an important thing to remember. Kim.
I'm going to talk about polio because my mom's sister died from polio. She was 3.
Wow.
My mom recently told me about the story, how she was taking care of her sister while her parents went out and they went to the fair and stuff. And back then, you don't have like cell phones to go calling everybody. And my mom was noticing that her sister was not with breathing kind of weird, kind of just different breathing and stuff. Mm-hmm. But there's nothing she could do about it. But I guess some neighbor had called saying, hey, how's it going? She said, oh, fine. Well, my sister's breathing funny. Mm-hmm. Next thing she knows, her parents were home and they're taking the kid to the doctor. And 2 weeks later, she died from polio. It was pretty scary thing. But reason why I bring that up is my dad, who is a retired dentist, who really studies vaccinations and all this stuff. And although he's explained it to me, it's very complicated. I'm not a medical person, but he says that shots like vaccinations like polio will only work for polio because it's a human disease and not a human animal disease. And that vaccinations like COVID are both an animal and human disease. So that disease will continue to come back in a different form, always. Mm-hmm. And he says the vaccinations don't really help because every time a new mutation comes out, the vaccination is pretty much useless. And I think that's how he told me. And he says this particular new vaccination has these protein spikes in them.
Right.
And
right. I wouldn't want to get too far off into the weeds on.
Yeah, but he's telling me that they thought the protein spikes would just stay in your arm, and it's not. It's going throughout your whole body,
Yeah.
and that's where the issues lie on
Mhm.
getting that vaccination.
Yeah, there's a lot of
Sure.
discussion.
Kind of scares
Michael.
me.
Sorry.
That was really short. Thank you, Kim. I now realize that you have some experience in your life that backs your opinion and your decision. I have a great deal more respect for it now than I did, because I thought for a while that it was just because that's what was, that's the other side. But now I see that you also have something in your history that prepares you to have that. So
Yeah,
it does, I don't agree with you any more than I did, but I have a lot more respect for it. Okay.
Well, that's, yeah, okay, great. Yeah, let's, Glennis, I don't have anything to respond to that.
For me, I think a lot of the problem with in our society comes down to a bumper sticker that I saw, and I'm not trying to say, it's one side or the other is terrible, but the energy is we want to own the libs, or we want to own the other side.
Yeah.
We want to make them feel bad, and I think that energy is what is helping to
Negative.
destroy us.
Yes.
Yep.
Here's a question that I would like to do, like a straw poll. I believe that currently we are in a cold civil war.
What civil war?
A cold civil war, right? Where the animosity and so that basically the sides are attacking each other, whether it be through trying to get somebody fired, cancel culture, public smearing, right? All of these tactics that are used from one side to another, except for physical violence, although that's happened as well, right? But currently the vitriol is so bad that I think we're kind of on a razor's edge. What do you think about that? Does anybody disagree with me?
I like
No.
what you're on.
Does anybody who agrees with me?
I agree.
Maybe with some
Yeah,
exceptions.
I think so, because I don't see anybody trying to offer anything that will grow into an answer to that.
Right.
I mean, a change from that.
And
So-
yeah, and this is to what the point that Glennis just made, that people are brazen with this idea of like own the libs, or on the other side, it's always good to punch a Nazi, right? Go punch a Nazi. And who is a Nazi? Well, a Nazi is somebody who disagrees with you, it seems.
The
Right.
Nazis, by the way, studied American government.
They did.
That's where they got their ideas. So we
Yes.
gotta be-
Redlining in Chicago,
Yeah.
to be exact.
Yeah.
That's where I figured to put
Yeah,
all
there-
the concentration. I mean,
There was a direct continuity. Yeah.
Mhm.
Dinesh D'Souza. If you want a good history on it, Dinesh D'Souza does a good history on it. Connie, and then Larry.
I'd like to say something about, I think Tom, a couple people talked about on social media, the increase in dissenting opinions.
Mhm.
And in a way, as a teacher, and when I think back about who got to have dissenting opinions, in a way, I think that is good, because I think a lot of people have had an opportunity to dissent, to have another opinion, whereas before they didn't have the avenue to do that. And so I can remember in classrooms, you would have the popular kids, the athlete, blah, blah, blah. It was pretty much the tone was their opinion, what they thought. And every once in a while, you'd have a brave soul who would speak up, but that's something I think we're going through a stage maybe where some of us who thought everybody thought like us.
Yeah.
And now we have to wake up and go, oh my God, you know, those numbers are big too.
Yeah.
They're not that little minority that we thought they were.
Mhm.
So in a way, I feel it's been good for me to be exposed to a lot of dissenting opinions. And I hope that once everybody gets to cough up all this stuff, that maybe then we'll see like the ideas that JC was talking about. Maybe we'll realize we're all vulnerable, we're
Right.
all fearful, and come back together. But right now, I think that's the stage we're in.
Yeah, yeah. And again, I think, Connie, that's kind of a gift of social media, because if you are in a minority, right, whereas like, let's say you were in your community and this community only has maybe one or two people who are interested in what you're interested in, then there's a feeling of isolation. But now with social media, with internet culture, you can find entire communities online that will support you and your interests. And there is something beautiful about that. I won't deny it. Larry.
A friend comes to mind, and I guess I won't say his name because many of you may know this person. He knows everybody in Roseburg,
Ah.
but he's a Nazi.
Oh,
He's a what?
He's a Nazi.
really?
His ideology, oh my goodness, he comes, I won't even say, you wouldn't believe, but you know, he's a really good friend. And so I try to avoid arguments. And so
Mhm.
if I try to talk to him about any of these ideas that he's talking about, he blusters. That means he comes back with so many facts that it just overrides everything that I might have said.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and then I look up his information later, and it was just a bunch of nonsense, or borderline information that wasn't really mainstream or anything like that. But anyways, so I've learned we're still good friends, and we go on these long 4-hour walks together, and I've learned to let him know what I think and then drop it in a way that he can't pursue. You know, so he knows that I'm disagreeing, but we don't argue. And it's really, really been hard with him because I really like him, but oh my goodness, he really thought that Hitler was a hero in our
Right.
history and all this stuff. And here's another thing. My son, working at a store, and he set his phone down. He was behind the counter. He set his phone down for a moment and went back to the back room to get something for a customer. And he came back and the phone was stolen. So they're kind of expensive, some of them. What he did is he got the security footage from the store, got that piece out, put it on social media. Within an hour, someone emailed him or messaged him and said, I know who that person is, and gave the name. Within 4 hours, the person who stole the the phone, came back to the store and handed it to my son and apologized.
Yes.
Isn't that weird? Because can you even conceive? All you old people out there, including me, our world has changed so much. Can you conceive of this happening, to get your thing back like that, just by getting the footage and putting it out there? And everyone knew.
Mhm.
Everyone knew who it was then. That person had to return it. Everyone knew who they were.
Right.
Not like that, they're branded a thief from now on. That's the negative thing about that I see about social media. You make a mistake and it's in your record, and that's who you are, even if it isn't who you are.
Or
Years
you
from now, they'll
don't
see
make
that
a
record.
mistake and somebody just wants to accuse you of something, you know.
That too, that happens.
But that's kind of cool about a happy ending. So I want to leave you guys with this. If I can share screen, if you've never read or heard this man speak, this is Daryl Davis. And Daryl Davis is a fascinating person. He is a blues and rock singer, kind of like a blues rock vocalist. But he did a TED Talk titled "Why I as a Black Man Attend KKK Meetings," which is absolutely worth listening to. That basically he's a man who made it a point, because he was curious, to befriend Ku Klux Klan members, and he has worked with many, many people and
Hmm.
brought them out of hate groups. You know, and his story is just an absolutely beautiful story. He's a hero of mine. So if you want to check that out, that would be useful. Boy, well, I can't say this was an easy conversation, but I think fruitful. And I really appreciate the honesty and the thoughtfulness coming from you all. It gives me hope. So.
We got 7 principles that require it.
Right. Fair enough. Yeah, and we need that reminder, I think. So, all right. Well, I hope you all have a beautiful week and a wonderful Sunday, and we'll do it again next week. Take care, all.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you, Michael. Bye.